Welcome to Move Like This, brought to you by the Accounting Move Project and sponsored by Moss Adams, the Center for Accounting Transformation, and CPA Trendlines. On this podcast, we share ideas and hear from guests about how they find, retain, develop, and advance women and other underrepresented groups in their accounting firms. Now, on to our guest. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Move Like This. Today, I am talking to someone I've known for a little while, Jeremy Vokt. He is the managing partner at Bland and Associates, and I just appreciate you being here today, Jeremy. Tell me a little bit about the firm.
Yeah, you bet. Myself and the firm, so I actually started Bland out of college back in 1998. Was there about a year, left, and came back about 6 years later as myself and Jason Tonjes and Troy McKinney were like three key partners that started here out of college. Jason Tonjes stayed here the entire time, and he took over the firm from Jerry Bland, the namesake, when I was gone, and asked us to come back in 2006 and help take over the firm and kind of do our first transition to the firm in 2006. At the time, I was like, no, I love where I'm at. I'm good. But yet I started to think about it more and kind of like maybe this podcast a little bit we're going to talk about. I had like 20 partners in front of me where I was at and probably five or six more in front of me before that. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll go jump ship and do this with Jason and Troy, and decided to. And we were 17 people at the time. And today we're 120, 130 people now. Good thing that we did. Love it. In terms of our firm too, kind of unique. About half of our firm is CPA firm as you would know it. The other little less than half, or about half of our firm, is we do some government consulting. So we get in the world of Medicare and Medicaid fraud, waste, and abuse monitoring, oversight, compliance, new payment models when they come out, when you talk about healthcare within the government. So we do different types of contracts within there, anywhere from 8 to 12 different contracts within there. That's what kind of makes us unique here in Omaha, Nebraska.
Wow. Well, sometimes you make those decisions for one reason and it winds up being the best thing ever. So it sounds like it has definitely worked in your favor. Well, I know back in May, you and a couple of your team members did a presentation for the Move Mini Summit on Bland's decision and process to become a ESOP.
Yep.
So, as you cannot read anything in the accounting profession today without seeing stories about private equity investment, consolidation through M&A, whatever that might be, but ESOPs rarely come up in those conversations. I think they are more now than they were maybe a couple of years ago, but you still don't hear a lot about them. So for those who may not be very familiar with what an ESOP is, can you kind of briefly explain them and then tell us what led to Bland to decide to, explore this option?
Yeah. Yeah, kind of it's ESOP's become a little bit of a hotter topic over the
Mhm.
last 18 months, 12 months for sure, within the more of the industry conferences I go to. I think about came up at an AICPA conference, G400, a little over a year ago, where there was a panel of PE and ESOP at the same panel. I've seen it at a panel accounting today that I just spoke at your webinar and panel, and I'm speaking at the BKR International Americas meeting here next month, again, about an ESOP. So it's starting to gain a little bit more momentum there in terms of what's out there. But that being said, ESOP, rewind there, ESOP is employee stock ownership plan. So it is a defined contribution plan as defined by ERISA. So think similar to 401k, but not. And I say that a couple of different ways. So similar to 401k in that we set up eligibility requirements just like a 401k plan can. So in our instance, to become eligible, be part of the plan of the ESOP, 21 years old, 1,000 hours of service, been here a year. So once you check those boxes, you're eligible for the plan. And we'll talk about what that means in a minute. But different than a 401k plan in terms of none of your money is going into it. No money goes into it from an employee standpoint. The employee gets really nothing but benefit in terms of annual shares allocated to the employee. So how that works is, in our instance, we're September 30 year end. So on September 30, we've got, let's say, 1,000 shares that get allocated every year. So those 1,000 shares on September 30th will be allocated based on your salary as a percent of everybody else's salary. So
Okay.
great, I got shares allocated to me. What's that mean to me? Really nothing yet, right? You just have a number of shares. And then what happens is we have a third party has to come in and do a valuation of our company. So we hire a third party, like normally a client would hire us to come in and do their audit, right? We hire
Hmm.
a third party to come in and value our company. And so they come and do that. And once they get that done, then we've got a company value and a stock price and number of shares. And then they'll put the two together for your participant statement, just like your 401k statement. So then you get a participant statement that shows number of shares and account value. So when you think about it, again, 21 years old, 1,000 hours, been here a year. That could be a brand new person that was an intern for a year and now is full time. And
Hmm.
so on day one, basically, they start earning shares. So that's front desk person to new hire to managing partner equal when it comes to this, right? Granted, salary is percent is proportionate, but still you're equal in terms of you're getting shares. So that new person, if they're here a while, I mean, shares every single year. So all of a sudden, rather than wait until you're a partner at 15 years or 20 years and then buy in, you're getting shares on almost day one for 10 or 15 years, right? That's slowly adding up number of shares and increasing value at that point in time. And it's costing you just believing in the company at that point, really, and working towards those company goals from an ESOP perspective. Um, our story, right? Kind of next and how we came about
Yeah.
that. So when I talk about our story, I'm talking about me and Jason Townish and Troy McKinney. We were the three owners of the company. And so when we took over back in 2007, let's call it, we kind of did our first quote unquote baby boomer succession plan. Jerry Bland was a baby boomer. So we were ahead of the curve when we did that succession plan, right? We were very young, 32 years old when we took over the firm. So we checked the box there, well ahead of the curve there. But we also knew we were all exactly the same age. We got a problem, but our problem's 20 years from now, right? But let's be mindful of it. But also, what we found out after attending like BKR meetings and listening to other managing partners and firms going through the succession issue was, okay, well, we don't want to do it that way. We don't want to just make a partner because they're a partner and give it away at that point in time. And what's it look like? Everyone had a different way of valuing shares and how to become a partner and what the buy-in is. We just heard so many different viewpoints. We wanted to do it differently. And we had time to figure this out, obviously. But we did have about two or three people that we kind of put through the ringer a little bit with about three or four different plans, right? But luckily, they're all still here today and believed in us and where we were going with that. But we just felt like it just wasn't right. And then it got to be where we were working with a banking contact of ours. He fell into an ESOP client and he saw an opportunity to go from commercial banking to full-time ESOP. And he went full-time ESOP banker with his bank. And as he would come to town and talk, we'd have him introduce him to a few clients and we just kind of listen about the ESOP and the process to other clients. And it got to the point where it kind of intrigued me and Jason and Troy saying, what's it mean if we're an ESOP at that point? So that was about 2017. At that point in time, I'm like, okay, I can take this ball and run with it and just find out more information for us. At the time, there was, I don't know, three or four or five different ESOP CPA firms or consulting company firms that we knew of that were kind of published out there. I talked to one or two of them, get some insights. I talked to our executive director at our Nebraska Board of Accountancy. I'm like, well, what do you think about an ESOP owning CPA firm? He's like, what's an ESOP? Right. So,
Yeah.
so we dealt with that. It was just new in Nebraska in terms of, for CPA firms. We had ESOPs, but not CPA firms. So I'm like, well, why don't you talk to Minnesota? I know there's a firm in Minnesota, and just if you wouldn't mind, just gather some information. What's it mean for us in Nebraska? He's like, would love to. So he ended up going to a conference, talked to the Minnesota Board of Accountancy. We touched base, I don't know, 3 or 4 months later. He's like, okay, Jeremy, if you're interested, I think we can do this and change the law to allow that in terms of ESOP owning a CPA firm. Because the law was written, what, 75, 80 years ago, and it talked about natural person owning a CPA firm. Well, ESOP's not a natural person, right? So it's a retirement plan. So just had to tweak some words within there. And so we're like, okay, thank you. I'll come back to you. And then we hired a consultant back in early 2019, beginning of 2019. We said, okay, rather than us think our stock's worth $1 billion with 100 people, what's it really worth, right? Um, so he walked us through what a valuation might look like and a transaction might look like. And we got to the point in middle of 2019, we're like, okay, this looks decent. So now we got to decide, is it right for our firm? And I went to two different ESOP conferences and just kind of was a fly on the wall listening to other ESOP companies talk. And it was all about culture, people, retention, longevity, and we kind of checked all those boxes at the time. So I felt like, okay, this feels pretty natural for us. Came back, talked to Jason and Troy. Yep, let's move forward. So in the summer of 19, we decided, yes, let's move forward with becoming an ESOP. So it took 6 months to get all that done. Transaction, hire a trustee, get the lawyers involved, go forward with, we had the law change right before that. The law was changed to allow it. And we rolled it out. No one really knew. On January 2nd of 2020, we became Nebraska's first ever employee-owned ESOP CPA firm. Had an all-firm meeting. We didn't have any ESOP clients, right? If someone knew of an ESOP in our firm, it was family member was part of one, cousin, somebody was just maybe an employee of one. And so they were shocked and yet excited. I mean, I did get one high five in the hallway saying, I'm an owner now, right? So again, everyone read it differently and what it meant to them. So then we had to go on an education journey since then. So kind of a long-winded answer to that one, but I think that hit on a few of your questions there.
Yeah, for sure. And what an interesting time to be making a major change when we were all about to shut
Oh,
down in a couple months, right?
yeah, so that was crazy. Yeah, so yeah, we announced it in January, shut down into March, right? And it was tough to celebrate. So when you ask about momentum and what's it mean, I mean, it took a while for us to get momentum because of that, because we weren't all together and it was tough to have those conversations more face to face and what's it mean. So, but now we're seeing, and we'll talk about that a little bit, some great benefits from that as well. So,
Well, yeah, that kind of leads me into my next question, which is, ESOPs, as you mentioned, are seen as, a huge retention tool and succession plan, obviously. But so since making that transition, how has it impacted your employee engagement and retention and, firm culture overall?
yeah, so great question. And it's kind of funny. All three of those were things we checked the box on in order to make the decision to become an ESOP.
Right.
Especially when I went to some of the conferences, the ESOP conferences ahead of time, it was okay, a lot of firm culture, right? A lot of people that were there together, whether it be factory workers, front desk workers, back office workers, all on the same page in terms of culture. Not that every day is a shiny, happy day, right? There's always stress and stuff, but great culture there. It's like, okay, boom, we checked that box, we felt like. Employee engagement. We measure our employee engagement annually, and we've done that for 8 or 9 years, even before an ESOP. So we're always measuring our employee engagement with a third party and putting a plan in place on better engaging our employees. So we feel like, boom, we check that box too at that point. And then retention wise, I mean, if I look at all 9 partners, I think all 9 started Bland as a staff accountant. So when we talk about longevity, a lot of our people and directors have been here from the very beginning, maybe only job at this point in time. So we kind of check that box too. So in terms of what's that mean for us being an ESOP, sometimes it just feels like another day because it does all those things checked our box. It checked the box at us as a firm. But so that's where we kind of make sure we look in the mirror and kind of challenge ourselves, saying, are we really celebrating this enough? So from where I sit, I'm always doubting myself as if am I really celebrating the ESOP enough? Am I really bringing it up enough? Are we educating it enough? Are we putting it out there enough? And we've got some goals around that, especially around recruiting, where we want to start to advertise that a little bit more with recruiting too, that maybe we haven't done a very good job at when we look in the mirror. So again, I think we can always do better at that to create more engagement, create a better culture, just create more enthusiasm around it.
Yeah. Well, I'm also curious, being that it's, employee owned, how has that influenced decision making at Bland? Have there been governance shifts or, any difference in how you approach setting strategic goals or priorities?
No, I kind of separated that one out a little bit. When I think about decision making, I would say it definitely affected one key decision back when we first became an ESOP. So again, became an ESOP in January of 2020. COVID hits end of March of 2020. If you remember, half of what we did was government contracting on Medicare fraud, waste, and abuse. A lot of what we were doing got time out, pushed to the side, or shrunk, or didn't know what was happening for about 3 months, 6 months.
Mm.
So if we were, I look back and because we were an ESOP, we kept everyone employed at that point in time. I think looking back, if we weren't an ESOP and it was me and Jason and Troy's pockets and livelihood, we probably would have laid people off, to be honest with you, because we didn't know, right? And that would have been a hard hole to dig out of.
Yeah.
So being an ESOP and knowing that we're all in it together and knowing that we could make some changes together to keep everyone there, that definitely, I think, looking back, probably changed our perspective of being an ESOP. So that was one instance. Talking about firm governance being an ESOP. So there is one technical change to that. So when you become an ESOP, so you're running your company day to day like you normally would, and nothing changes there, right? You have a trustee now. A trustee oversees the plan for the good of the employees, just like you have a trustee in a 401(k) plan as well. And then between the trustee and me as managing partner, we have a board of directors. So every ESOP, so the trustee wants a board of directors there to kind of help be a go-between, right? Make sure management's doing things they're supposed to be doing, run the company right, and then also kind of reporting to the trustee because the trustee's not here every day either in terms of what they're responsible for. So every ESOP runs their board differently. In our case, we've got a board of five, three at Bland, two independent, just the way ours worked. And then the trustee kind of just dictates how often and how we should kind of not dictate, works with me in terms of how often, how we should use the board. So the board is kind of there. We hope to use it more strategically when we think about, especially with all the M&A stuff going on and PE stuff going on and opportunities that are out there. How do I get my board to act more strategically? So we're still feeling that out a little bit as a firm in terms of our board. Other governance things we changed before we were an ESOP, we started to get again back to that partner model and why we became an ESOP and why that didn't work for us was we also got rid of the partner meetings and before we were an ESOP. Thinking, okay, knowing that we were going to grow, what are we going to do with 15, 20 partners in a room? And do you really get anything done at that point?
Mm.
Not everybody is working on the business, some are working in the business. So how do we separate the two a little bit? So before we became an ESOP, I went down the path of creating department heads, like official with roles and responsibilities that they're responsible for, that I'm coming to them for. So it's rather than 15 partners, there's just four of us at that point. And so now I've created almost like an executive type of council, right? With those
Right.
department heads and
Yeah.
stuff. And so
C-suite.
so that ended up working well as we became an ESOP. We bumps to figure out on the way through that because it was different, right? In terms of, well, I'm a partner and now there's no partner meeting. Well, what were we really accomplishing in the partner meeting? What were we really doing there? Because we're still doing strategy as a team. We're still doing all the strategy together. We're setting goals together, and that morphed as well in terms of how we do that, which we can talk about too, and how that aligns with our ESOP. But so really, we changed the governance before we were an ESOP, and then we meet as a board a few times a year at that
Mhm.
point. So
Well, having sat in some of those partner meetings with 20 or so people, I can tell you not a lot gets done, and a lot of them, some of them do,
yeah,
some
yeah,
are
yeah.
very good at that. But yeah, I have to say, if I were a partner and you were to say less meetings, Bonnie, I would not be sad at all about that.
So we traded out meetings, and we can talk about that. Different meetings are happening, but yeah. So yeah, no more partner meetings. So
Yeah. Well, one of the things that is, I mean, with everybody owning the firm, your level of transparency has to increase, I would imagine. Especially when it comes to things like, financials and in your case, stock forecasts, right? So, how have you maintained an openness across teams and how have the employees responded to that level of insight?
yeah.
I mean, a lot of firms would not be sharing their financials, and don't share their financials with their employees. So it's a bit of a different situation.
Yeah, again, it's another box we checked before we were an ESOP. We've been fully transparent before we were an ESOP. So we always shared, go back since 2008, let's call it, shared financials with the entire team. So when I say that, a couple different ways we do that. So as a whole firm, we would usually meet 2 to 4 times a year, all firm meeting, some sort of update. And at that point, the entire firm would see basically gross profit and above. So revenue forecasts, budget to actual, where we're going, what's under budget, what's over budget, and our direct costs, and then our gross profit. Because really, our gross profit is our efficiency, charge hours, realization, how efficient are we, that everyone's in control of. So if we set a benchmark for gross profit rather than just charge hours, they know what the charge hours mean for
Right.
gross profit and tying those together, right? So That's always been out there 3 or 4 times for the whole firm. Management level and above would get that same financial statement information, gross profit and above for the whole firm and the department every month. So they'd have that every month. They'd have budget to actual. They'd have to kind of report to me a little bit of why we're not meeting, why we are meeting, why we're under gross profit, over gross profit, things like that. So then that, and then partners would have the full boat in terms of financials, right? In terms of what they're responsible for. So we've always had that transparency from financials before an ESOP. Um, we've become a little more transparent when it comes to stock price and things now too, with some changes we've done with our governance and our strategy as well. We're a Traction EOS shop, so entrepreneurial operating system. So Traction is our goal setting philosophy.
Hmm.
The more you mention traction, the more other people raise their hands. Oh yeah, we're doing it, or we're thinking about doing it. And it's just goal setting. We always did retreats, but and did strategy, and we kind of start off good, and then throughout the year you'd kind of slow down because you're doing real work, right? At that point, traction in EOS keeps it front of mind all the time. So from a transparency standpoint, I report to the entire firm where we're at every single quarter in terms of our strategy. Because we meet once a quarter, and then once a week happens too in terms of department meetings. So we traded out partner meetings for these department meetings
Oh,
that
gotcha.
align with our goals and strategy. So we're working on goals and strategies all year long, which aligns with being an ESOP and employee owned, that we're working on this all together and how it aligns. So transparency wise, we then show every quarter. I started to about a year ago, giving a kind of an estimated rough back of the napkin stock forecast, right? So you could kind of see here's where we're at budget to actual, here's where we're going to go in 1 year and 3 years. What could that mean for stock value, right?
Yeah.
Very high level. So we kind of talk about range because then it allows them to kind of see, oh crap, okay, I see how my goals tie to the department goals, to the firm goals, to the stock price at that point. So starting to that, we started to connect all those dots about a year ago, really, so they could start to see that before we were kind of afraid to put out a stock guess out there, right? But talking with trustee and how we felt comfortable with our valuation, what that looks like, we just give a range. Hey, we hit these metrics, this is where it could be, right? We don't know because we don't do it. Outside firm comes and does our stock price, right? So this is what we're aiming for. So we're a little more transparent now with that. In addition to the transparency, this last year we had our trustee come in and present our valuation to the entire firm. Before it was me. I'd
Hmm.
present some highlights, stock price, and just kind of want want, right? I mean, just me doing it. So how about the trustee come in and give their perspective? So that was great. Excuse me, to have them come and present, hey, this is how Great Bland's doing right now. Here's a significant stock increase. Here's why. Here's what we see coming down the road. Um, what Jeremy's saying lines up to what we're seeing too. So it just kind of gave validation to what we were doing as a team as well. So um, fully transparent, always have been, and try to be as much as we can.
I I love that. And the results kind of speak for themselves. I mean, Bland has outperformed the market since becoming an ESOP, so in the last 5 years or so. Um, what do you believe? I mean, you talked about some of the success factors, but what do you think is the most important contributor to that level of success that you're seeing?
Culture and the buy-in. I think if the team, if we don't believe in each other and the team doesn't believe in leadership, it's tough to do. I think the other key contributor, especially this last 2.5 years, we've gone from almost doubling in size, pretty close to it, is implementing traction or EOS. Again, full on accountability on goals and strategy, and everyone in the firm is working towards that and working on it, and everyone's accountable to everybody, top down, bottom up in terms of accountability in that. So now that you see you all work towards a strategy piece, it all aligns with value, all aligns with ESOP. Not that there's not pitfalls. I mean, yeah, we're
Sure.
still dealing with the same issues every other firm issue deals with. It's just now we're doing it more together rather than kind of complaining about it and doing nothing about it, right? So how
Yeah.
do we tackle it how do we bite it off one by one and just knock it out? So
I like it. And we talk about culture all the time on here and the importance of it, and that people are like you're not a group of tax returns and
right,
government audits and whatever it is. You're a group of people.
right.
So you really do have to focus on that, their most important asset. So I love the fact that I mean, you got an ownership stake in something, you're going to be more committed to it. That's just how things are and how people are wired.
Yeah, and
So
especially if you're part of the strategy and part of the goals and that all aligns. I mean, we're seeing great return on that now. It's taken a while, um,
Mm.
and hard work, but you're seeing great return there too. So.
Well, for any other firm leaders out there that may be looking at options to, staying where they are or merging or PE, what advice would you offer as they evaluate whether an ESOP might be a right fit? And uh, on the other side, what should they be prepared for in that first year of transition?
In terms of advice, and like I kind of went and talked to a couple different, again, there's only a couple at the time ESOP CPA firms at that point. Just kind of feel out what that was. And again, no one really knew about CPA firms being ESOPs, 6 years ago. So got a little bit of knowledge there. I think going to those conferences, so there's ESOP Association and the NCEO are two of the main ESOP organizations out there. So me, spending a couple $100 to be a member and going to there's local events here. So going to that, meeting some other companies I really didn't know were ESOPs maybe in town, and just get some contacts there and kind of just learn a little bit more there. That's a good start. Also, a good start is I've had multiple conversations with other firms throughout the country in terms of what our experience was and talking to them about it. I mean, love talking about it. It's not a problem to talk to somebody about that. Was at the Accounting Today Firm Growth Forum and had two different conversations after the fact about it because of my presentation. And I've had other firms at BKR talking about it before in terms of it. So just asking questions and learning more
Mhm.
would be the first thing I do. And then when I talk to those people about it, I try to learn a little bit more about the same thing we just talked about in terms of the boxes to check. Culture, when are you gonna retire, or what's your plan, or what's your second in command look like? What's that next layer look like is
Yeah.
a big thing too, right? In terms of what's that look like, just like you would a regular CPA firm partnership, right? That's still got to be there. Um, and then it's looking at, okay, is it PE that I want to take to grow and do something, or is it I want my employees to kind of own this thing and maybe we grow it together how we want to grow it. I mean, two very good things there, and it's a lot of pros, cons to think about there, but it's definitely become more of an option
Hmm.
for companies. And again, multiple panels with PE and ESOP on the same panel, they're talking about those things. So that's the first thing I would do to gain some knowledge. And the second part of your question was,
Oh, what to expect in that first year?
oh, what to expect. We had to change a little bit in terms of what our metrics look like. So in our industry, there's a couple different benchmark surveys, right? Rosenberg, AICPA's got a MAP survey, IPA's got a survey. That's still useful, but we're looking at it differently because now all of a sudden debt's a big deal to us. Because as I sold the firm to the ESOP, now the ESOP owes me money, right? So there's debt involved. So all of a sudden now there's a monthly debt payment that could be significant. Whereas usually a CPA firm is earn all my cash, pay all my cash, earn all my cash, pay all my cash, right?
Yeah.
Here it's now level. So when it's a slow month, they're still making that monthly debt payment, right? So that was different, managing cash flow a little bit better than maybe you're used to. Um, More keen on gross profit, even though we were before, but gross profit really drives stock value at that point in time. How efficient are we? Doesn't matter all the indirect costs, all the G&A costs, that's just grand scheme peanuts things. It's how are we efficient with our people? Because that's where you're going to get your most value. The better the gross profit, the better the value, but also there's a work-life balance there and things like that. But so we're managing both of those at the same time. Um, Relationship with the bank, we took on bank debt, so all of a sudden we've got covenants we never had before.
Mm,
CPA firms typically don't have much debt. I mean, it's cash in, cash out, so that was
right.
difficult to look at. We also look at our firm from an EBITDA standpoint now versus net income per partner doesn't mean anything to us anymore at all. It's all gross profit and EBITDA. What's that look like, right? And what does our EBITDA look like compared to some of these deals that are going on right now in terms of PE or mergers and acquisitions? So that is kind of hard to come by, but we like to try to find that if we can to kind of see how we compare there. And that's where we're really looking at things from how we manage the business now.
Do you consult with other firms on this? I know you said you're happy to have any conversations, but
Oh yeah, I've had multiple conversations, and it's usually been one or two Teams calls. I've had one, I guess maybe consulting engagement where I went out and really talked to the whole partner group about it for a day or so. So I see that as an opportunity for me and the firm too to talk more about it as well.
yeah,
And
I do too.
happy to talk about it more too. I mean, because I think it is a good option for people. Just gotta be the right fit too.
Yeah. I put my marketing hat on there for a second, and I'm like,
Yep.
this sounds like an opportunity for you and for those out there that might be thinking about it.
It's
So,
kind of funny. It led a couple of our clients to become ESOPs right after we became too. We didn't talk them into it. We're like, hey, I don't want to talk anybody into it, but I
mm-mm.
want to say, here's the option. You decide. I'll help you weigh pros, cons, help you put a list together, and then you decide. So we had a couple of clients go that route since we became an ESOP too.
Oh, very cool. Well, this is fascinating. I'm just having worked with firms for, we're getting close to 20 years now. This is something, obviously we've talked about a handful of times, but I do think it's an interesting option when there's, you have fiercely independent firms out there who don't necessarily want to merge, or take on PE money, but do want to figure out a way to grow and retain their talent. I mean, retention is what we're digging into deep with this year's move research. So, it's an interesting option to consider, and you
Yeah,
obviously have good story to tell.
I would say one of the things that we work hard at too. You mentioned that word fiercely independent. I think we all want to be fiercely independent, but not having that PE money might be somewhat of a con or disadvantage too, right? Because
Mhm.
what are they throwing money at in terms of technology or back office support and things like that? So how do we check that box? And that's where we reach out and lean into our accounting firm association, BKR, and other organizations like that, and attending industry conferences, right? So we got to make sure we're more aware of spending more time there so that we know what tools are out there and we're not just fiercely independent in our four walls and everything's passing us by. We got to be aware of
Right.
that too. So how do we combat or how do we supplement maybe those firms that might get PE money and do other enhancements? So, or
Yeah.
where do we find our niche where maybe we're going to be too? So,
And how do you remain competitive with them
yeah,
when,
right,
the money that's getting thrown out there is
right,
pretty, they're big piles of money going
yeah,
on for
yeah,
sure.
yep,
Well, this is awesome. I do want to close with just a couple of fun questions that
yeah.
I always laugh. They kind of amuse me. Though I have had people tell me they enjoy them too. So, when you were a kid, 5 years old, whatever age you remember from, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, fighter pilot, Top Gun,
Ah,
absolutely. Yep. So yeah, Top Gun, and I think there's a arcade game about the same time called Afterburner. Yeah, I remember doing a report on the Air Force Academy and all that. So yeah, that's where it started. So
that's funny. Well, if you had a chance to travel anywhere in the world for free, you don't have to take time off. You don't have to, all those things that keep us from just traveling all the time. Where would you go and why?
yeah, so my wife and I probably have the same answer to this, and now it's took a pretty big hit because of what's going on in the world. We wanted to walk where Jesus walked. We want to go to the Holy Land. We want to be able to go see Jerusalem, go see Bethlehem, go see all of that, right? I think that would be amazing. A little hard in today's environment now, but that'd be the one place that's on our list and will be on our list till it's time to go. So I think that would be the trip.
Wow, that would be, I would say, yeah, that might not be a thing you want to do this year, but it's nice and probably rare that husband and wife answer that question the same
Yeah.
way too. I have no idea what my husband would say, but it might be different than what I do, most likely.
We've talked about it, and yeah, just haven't been able to do it, obviously. So.
All right. Well, I hope you do one
Yeah.
day. And if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Oh, the Force. Huge Star Wars fan. Definitely have the Force. That'd be the superpower. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I've
Well,
tried for 40 years, 45 years. Doesn't seem to happen. So, yes,
right.
yes.
To move things with the
Yep,
force. That's
yep,
that's awesome.
yep.
Well, I think you might be more likely to wind up in the Holy Land at some point than to
Right, right.
acquire the force, but I hope
Yep, I
both
think so.
happen.
Yep, I think so. Yep.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I've
Yeah,
thoroughly enjoyed our conversation and appreciate you taking the time to have it.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to Move Like This, brought to you by the Accounting Move Project and sponsored by Moss Adams, the Center for Accounting Transformation and CPA Trendlines. If you'd like to learn more, visit our website at accountingmoveproject.com. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends and colleagues too. I'm your host, Bonnie Buol Ruszczyk, and until next time, keep moving forward.